Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the podcast titled When Wildfire Comes. My name is Dr. Christopher Potter, and I'm a wildfire scientist with over 30 years of experience working for NASA, the nation's space agency, and with local communities impacted by wildland fires. I've studied wildland fire on the urban interface using satellite imagery and ground measurements for really all of the most destructive fires in the Western US and published many science papers on these incidents and the damage they've created. And I myself live in a high risk wildfire zone in Northern California, so I've seen it firsthand myself. So today we're going to hear from our invited guest about their close encounter with a major wildland fire that occurred during the past several years. As I always mention, this is not a breaking news report. This fire happened in 2017, but it's rather another case study episode in the podcast series during which our guest recounts their reactions, their firsthand observations, even their emotions, if they want to, of the wildfire approaching and burning in their town and community, and most importantly, the lessons learned from such a really horrifying and devastating event. So today I'm really pleased and honored to welcome our special guest, who's Andy Ortega from Ventura, California. Andy is currently the president of the Ventura Fire Safe Council, very important organization there, making people safe in the county of Ventura and around Southern California. And he has over 30 years of experience as a Ventura County firefighter as well. So he's seen many fires and been involved in incidents and firefighting. And today we're going to focus in on the Thomas Fire. Let me just give you a little background on the Thomas Fire. It started in around the hills of Ventura, the city of Ventura, in December of 2017. It burned for about a month before it was contained and burned over 280,000 acres. That's 440 square miles. So very large fire. At the time, it was the largest in modern California history. And it's currently still one of the 8 largest, most destructive wildfires as of 2025. So it burned over 1,000 structures and resulted in the death of at least 2 people. So a really devastating event for the city and county of Ventura and that region of Southern coastal California. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Andy and ask him to tell us about who he is and his background in and long history in fighting fires and dealing with fires and the losses he's had in fire encounters in Ventura. So Andy, welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Chris, thanks so much for inviting me and for the nice introduction. Anyway, so for the listeners, Andy Ortega, I'm 64 years old. I've been a lifelong Ventura City resident, but I've worked in the county my whole life. So 37 years with the fire department, Ventura County Fire, and retired in 2017, February of 2017. And I retired out as the assistant chief of emergency services. So my day job was the readiness and response of all county assets. And so it was nice to actually retire. But then just so you know, as far as my history here, my family's grown up here. We love Ventura. I don't know if you know much about Ventura, but we're a coastal city. And the county itself has 10 cities, but Ventura is a coastal city. The county has 850,000 people. Ventura City is about 110 to 20,000 people. We like the coast. It's the north side of us is buttoned up to the Los Padres Forest, and the west and south side, the Pacific Ocean. Very north of us is Santa Barbara and Santa Barbara County. Very south of us is Los Angeles County. And so we're in a really nice space as far as like weather. And matter of fact, Chris and I were talking earlier, and we just have a medium high pressure system. So the weather's been absolutely beautiful in Ventura, and that's one of the reasons I enjoy it here. I enjoyed working here. My father was a firefighter before me with Ventura County, and he started in 1960, and I started in 1980, and then retired out in 2017. And so a little bit what Chris was asking about my vocational background, yes, was fire service. And again, that even that particular fire, the Thomas fire, the person who was running that fire is now the fire chief, Chief Dustin Gardner. And Chief Gardner actually replaced me in my role as the emergency services assistant chief. So for a year, we mentored together very closely. He's a remarkable fire chief and remarkable man. He's actually the guy that was on the phone with me and told me that my house was destroyed. And so it's a really kind of an odd emotional thing. But the truth is like when you speak firefighter talk, it's clear. It's like even the phone call, it was really clear. He goes, "I can't find your house. It's a long flag lot. You'll never find it from the street because up in the mountains of Ventura, the homes are a little separated. They're not as dense, as maybe condos stuck next together and stuff like that. So there's space. And so with that being said, he ended up saying, I can't find your house. I said, it's a long flag lot. It's about 100 yards down from the street. So he's walking and he just says, "Hey, do you have manzanitas?" I said, "No, it's my neighbors." He goes, "Well, they're gone." And this is the day after
Wow.
the beginning, December 4th, it started. So this is probably 8:30 or 9 in the morning of December 5th. And then he says, "Oh, do you have an avocado tree with a swing?" I said, "Yes, that's my house." He goes, "Oh, Chief, your house is gone." And I said, "Oh my
Wow.
God." And I said, is there anything salvageable?" And he said, "It's to the ground." And as soon as he said that, I hung up. I said, "I got to go." And I just busted out crying. I told my wife because we were at friend's house that day watching the news. And that's how we even alert him because I never asked for anybody to come and put a fire engine on my house because of my past role or experience or whatever.
Of course. Yeah.
It was just, matter of fact, even the decision to leave was a difficult decision for me because of my background. Well, maybe I should stay and just defend, but I thought
Hmm.
if I was in that role, which I had been in that role many times, the one making a command, evacuate. And so I realized that Dusty was in that position. And I thought to myself, if I was in that role and I said, I want people to evacuate, what would I expect? And I had to deal with that myself, thinking the right thing to do is really to leave. So at some point we left, and then we never saw our house again standing. So that's that's a
That's
little bit
just so hard
that
to hear. Yeah.
yeah. But I was so glad that he was so clear. There was no
Sure.
mixing of words, no trying to assuage anything. It was a clear understanding of what happened. You know,
Yeah. I notice when I interview firefighters on for these podcasts, they're stoic, they're matter of fact. It's their professional job to do their job and not be tied up in emotions because that detracts from the concentration they have to have on getting the job done, right? And he was doing his job. So,
yeah,
but your reaction, of course, was exactly what I think most of us would feel. And so, could you maybe back up for us? What, 24 hours maybe? Um,
yeah.
and what was happening on just to you? Where were you, and what was the neighborhood? What was going on in the neighborhood? Uh,
Okay, so,
around the time the fire was going to start.
yeah. So first of all, December 4th, it's for me and our family. My children are older. They're in their 45,
Mhm.
42, and 40, right? And so, and even my grandkids are 24 and 20 right now. So they're older, and we're empty nesters. So we were empty nesters 8 years ago, and we were so set up for Christmas. I mean, and the whole holiday season. Why? Because it's the first time ever in our married life that I wasn't on duty. And then
Uh-huh.
I knew about the wind event coming up, and I still had my app. I could see where troop movement was and where the fire department assets were, and I could always look at that. But I was really, and I still do. I always pay attention to weather. One's a high pressure system, one's rain coming in, and it's probably part and parcel to being a firefighter. You just get used to paying attention to the weather because that's part of your preparation. So with the wind event coming up, I was really actually kind of excited. I'm always excited anyway, because for us in the fire service, it's game on, Super Bowl. All right, deployments. We're going to listen to people like you from NASA or NOAA, and you get your weather forecast at 0700 in the morning. You have your ops briefings at 8 o'clock. And the cool thing was like I knew all that was happening, but I didn't have to run it or be involved with it, or I was off duty. And so it was the
Yeah.
first time to celebrate a holiday season without the weight of being the emergency services bureau chief, or being on duty as a firefighter on an engine, or having to prepare the water, the cool the water, and do all your A checks and B checks. So I was pretty excied. And so
Yeah, that's
as the day went
understandable.
on,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
something that you feel here's a chance to watch my colleagues do the great job they do, right?
yeah, well, and exactly. First of all, you're really happy about the fact that you're off the monkeys off your shoulders, and the second thing is you're really proud. I was super proud of the folks that were in place that particular day, and it was one of those unique moments where a lot of the very skilled wildfire firefighters, chief officers, and leadership were in county. They weren't at
Mm.
some ACC meeting. They weren't at some, you know, uh, seminar or stuff like that. So most of the skilled firefighters were in county, and they even set up for deployments and added extra. They went into a plan, an emergency plan, to add extra assets into the county in the event of a wildfire, and which I think was completely appropriate. And with this particular, the 14 days of pretty significant wind. That first day, you could tell it was calm in the morning, and by mid-afternoon, you could feel the wind really kicking in. And so for us in Ventura, it was just a windy day. And then late or mid-afternoon, I got a phone call or a text from a very good friend, and he said, "Aren't you glad you're retired?" And he mentioned a fire in Santa Paula. And so immediately I just clicked on my app, and I thought, oh my God, that's in Santa Paula. That's moving towards Wheeler Canyon. I look at it, and they're already calling for because I'm listening in on the command channel, and you can hear Chief Cook and Chief Gardner talk back and forth, and starting to deploy and request lots of equipment and assets and aviation, and they're just spooling up for a large scale fire. And so I knew it was serious. And in my brain, the emergency services brain, I started to think through, okay, what about us? And my wife said something about, is that fire in Ventura going to reach, or is fire in Santa Paula going to reach Ventura? I go, it's going to go past Ventura, probably all the way to the Avenue, and probably to Ojai. So this is going to be a very big fire. And even in my mind, the box that I created that the fire would probably be in, way underestimated. I had no clue it would, circle around the back of Ojai and go up to Los Padres and all the way up to Lake Cachuma in Santa Barbara County.
Yeah.
It was just a massive footprint for a fire. And, you guys in your business probably can predict wind, but that wind was probably still on record as some of the fastest moving fire that we've had in California. It was, like you said, the largest fire in California history. And I'd been on many of the largest fires in California in the 37 years that I worked. But you think in 37 years, it took us maybe all those 37 to have 4 or 5 fires that are even near that size, in 6 years, because it's 8 years since the fire now, but in 6 years, the Thomas Fire was the 8th largest fire in California history. So if you put that in perspective, there was 8 larger fires in California in a span of 5 to 6 years.
Yeah,
We've had some,
they're just
yeah,
getting bigger all the time and more intense all the time, right?
yeah. And the concern I have is like, yeah, the fires are going to be big, and you take a look at the Southern Sierras, and there's all those dead trees from the beetle disease, and that's all going to burn at some time. But I'm noticing something different, which is really troublesome. And what I'm noticing is that we're not necessarily needing a very large fire. You can have a 28,000 acre fire as compared to a 200,000 acre fire, and the 28,000 acre fire is destroying 5,000 homes. You can have a fire in Lahaina that's maybe 3,000 acres that destroys the entire Lahaina city. You can have a fire in the Palisades, that thing that's 5,000 homes, and then an Eaton fire over in Pasadena or Altadena, you look at close to 9,000 homes. That right there should cause us to pay attention, and should really cause us to say, hey, hold on. Like, for instance, you and I had a conversation the other day about the Thomas Fire, right? Think about this in Ventura County, because we had really significant fuel hazard reduction culture and plans in place, 100-foot clearance from every structure in the county. That metric or that policy served us well. However, the Thomas Fire blew it out of the water. So for
Yeah,
some reason, we still had that policy in place, but all of a sudden, we need to recognize there's more that needs to take place, more that needs to happen, for us to really save our homes and communities. And if these fires, like the 28,000 and 18,000, 3,000 acre fire, the Paradise Fire, even the Camp Fire up north, that was actually a large fire, but it took out an entire community of Paradise, right?
yeah,
Anyway, but you're getting my point, is like, we're starting to see not even so massive a fire, but we're seeing very destructive fires. And I think that's where we need to really weigh in. And, I never really thought about being on the Fire Safe Council. What happened was, like, after that, we lost the house. It took us 3 years to rebuild and get back in, and then do the landscape and all that other stuff. So it was quite a process, a huge learning process for us, very emotional, traumatic process. I never thought I'd build a house,
yeah,
especially in those conditions, right? So this guy that worked that was the president of the Fire Safe Council kept saying, Andy, I think you need to be on the Fire Safe Council. You have a professional background, but with this personal story, I think you're the right person to help us out on the board. And I said, there's no way, Mike, I'm not doing it. I got to build my house back. But once I built the house back, I think through 2020, we were back in the house. I went to one of the Fire Safe Council meetings, and I thought, man, this is completely intuitive for me. It makes so much sense. Um, if it was me, it'd be like, when wildfire comes, like your topic, let's have less structural loss. Let's
yeah,
have
for
less
sure.
life loss. When wildfire comes, let's be prepared. Let's really put some substance to ready, set, go in those programs. When wildfire comes, what will your neighborhood, and community be like? What kind of preparation are you doing ahead of time, for these type of events?
Yeah,
Because the thing that, when you say when, you're not saying if. And I love that part of your topic, Chris. It's like very important for the listeners to key into this. Like, we live in an environment, in an area where fire takes place. We can make a difference, and we can make a significant difference in our own home, in our neighborhood, and our communities, just by simply adding some more things to culture rather than just a 100-foot space.
yeah, for sure. I mean, I want to get a lot more into these improvements that can be made and still have been made and still need to be made in any city. And your Ventura's as good of or better than any city to talk about, I'm sure. But just before we leave the actual event of the fire, could you just describe for us, as you were evacuating, as you were leaving the house for the last time, and looking around, what were you seeing in the hills above Ventura? What could you see flames already, or just smoke?
Yeah. So I live on the hillside in Ventura, and most of the homes here, have ocean views, and they're nestled in a hill.
Yeah,
And there's three major communities: Skyline, Ondulando, and Clear Point. And so we got the first of all, I knew we were going to get evacuated because I was listening to the chatter on the command channel. So I said, "Hey, hon, I think we're going to get evacuated pretty quick." And it wasn't more than maybe 10 minutes that the order came out, right?
Yeah.
And he goes, "Are we going to go?" I said, "Let me go first hard in the house." So I walked around the entire house, probably spent about an hour, moved everything that was even slightly combustible away from the home, right? So I just kind of
Yeah.
thought about stuff like that, and walked it as if I was a firefighter walking my house. If I was going to come and protect this house, what would I do? And I did exactly that. Even the vents, I taped up the vents on the bottom coming into the
Yeah.
garage, closed all the windows. I just did the basic stuff. And then I walked in and, so what I could see, first of all, it's super windy. And our house is a mile from the 1 mile down the hill from the brush line. But the homes on the top, you can see the fire railing. I mean, so fast east to west, and our house is south. So I'm thinking I'm in a good spot,
Right.
because this fire is going. It's going to go all the way to West Ventura, and then the river bottom is probably going to stop it because there's probably a mile or two break between you get another fuel bed going north towards Santa Barbara. So I thought there's no way on earth it's going to jump that. So that's where it's going to be. It's going to stop there. So my thought was, I can see the fire, I can see the flames. It's racing across, but I'm very happy because there's no smoke coming right over my house. There's no hot ash dropping on my home. And
Good.
like I said, we're a mile down, even though we're still on the hill, a little bit. Let all this settle down and let these people, have their drama, because it looked pretty chaotic, and there's no way I want to engage in that. And so I said, let's just stay home. I'll pay attention to the radio and pay attention to the fire itself. But like I said, at that point, probably 9 o'clock, even close to 10 o'clock, I felt like, we're in a good spot right now. It's going to take
Right.
out probably all the homes on that top street. And that will probably be what happens. And it goes all the way to the avenue. And I don't know about the north side because I was just concerned about our home. And so, my wife kind of fell asleep and she got up and she said, "Should we take stuff?" And I said, "Yeah, grab some stuff that's important, and I'll put all the important papers in the safe, and then make sure that's where those things are." And so I felt pretty confident about that, and I actually way underestimated several things. So the decision to leave, probably about 11:30, my wife walks me up the driveway. Like I said, it's a long flag lot, so a long driveway. I get to the end of it, and I can see homes spattered through the top of our track, already on fire,
Oh
but
my
still
gosh.
moving east to west. So I could see probably 15, 20 homes just ripping. And I'm thinking through tactically what we'd want to do. But right now I'm recognizing very few assets are in our housing track. Maybe a fire truck here and there, but the reality is, like, so many assets are probably from Santa Paula to here, and probably trying to construct or organize this division, or this, because division would be geographical, or it could be a structure working group where you really want all these people to protect Ondulando or Ventura, but they're in the infant stages of organizing.
Mhm.
Realize that by looking at this. And so as I looked at it, I thought, okay, we probably should go. And like I said to you earlier, the reality was, I was thinking through and toying with, should I just stay and let Jill go? And then inside, I thought, if I gave that command, what would I expect? I'm a civilian now. And I wanted to comply with the guy that was in charge of the fire, who's now the fire chief, Chief Gardner. And I thought, that's the right thing to do. And so we
Yeah.
just, honestly, and here's the thing, I totally underestimated, right? From what I saw, tactically, it didn't look like it was going to come this way at all. It looked like it was going to go east to west. And we're south, like a mile south down the hill. So I packed up a bag that I thought I'd be in a hotel for a couple of days and make sure I can do my workouts. My wife put a bag full of clothes and some of her favorite belts and whatever. I felt good about all the important papers were in a safe. And then we took off to my daughter's house about 11:30. We were there, and then probably about 2 in the morning, I heard the worst thing I could hear, and it was because I was still listening to command channel. Everybody's asleep, and Chief Cook, who was working operations at the time, said, "Ventura, notify Ventura City to brace for more evacuations. The wind shifted from north to south. And
Wow.
that
Okay.
first time I said, oh my God, this is not good. And so if it took out the drainages here with a north-south wind and coming with that heavy east wind, it's going to probably wipe out some homes. I still felt pretty good about where I was at, but the other thing that I didn't expect was that up here in Ondulando and the hillside homes, the tanks filled with water were up. There was no water in the tanks,
Oh my
and so the
gosh.
firefighters had no water to fight to protect the structures. So they'd have to get water tankers or go all the way down to way down the hill, a mile or so or 2 miles, fill up their tank with water and come back up. And so that's if you want to handicap a firefighter, take away his water. You
Yeah,
know,
of course. Of course.
so it
Yeah.
was just a horrible thing to know later that took place. They just didn't have water to put, take care of embers and take care of homes, which we would normally do. You know,
Yeah,
uh,
of course.
so that really crippled the firefighting force. And what happened as a water district, they had a pump and a pump station, but since the Edison was the electricity was out, their generator didn't work, and so their redundant system failed. Um,
Ah,
and so the tanks had no water, therefore it was really difficult to fight the fire. And then you get conflagration style where one home starts another home, starts three homes, starts 10 homes. And that was happening all over the mountain. And with the speed of the fire and the wind, it just became homes were the sources for fire to the next home. Um, and that was very devastating. And that's how our home burned, because
yeah.
probably a row of four homes directly across the street with a 60-mile-an-hour wind, probably blowing, BTUs and hot embers and everything right into our house. So
Yes.
that was and that was what happened here.
Yeah,
So I hope I
that's
answered your question,
that's
but
just
that's that's
amazing.
that's about what happened that day.
Yeah, yeah. And oh, that's just breathtaking, really. To hear that one home starts the next home, and I don't know if it's the flame length can actually extend in a neighborhood like yours from one to the other, or whether you said it's like that radiant heat being pushed by the wind and embers, but it's probably all three, right?
It is. You got your direct flame contact when you have a density issue. Our houses are a little bit spread out, so you probably had the wind. So you had a blowtorch activity, and I've seen this many times. I've told many people I've seen thousands of homes burn. It's just never I've seen my home burn. I just
Hmm.
never. That was the first time I experienced that loss. Where it was mine. That's my house. It's personal to me. You know,
Sure.
um, so it was very rough. It was a rough patch for us.
Yeah, it was the roughest. Yeah, I can imagine. So, hey, why don't we shift and get back to what do you think you learned? What did the city learn? What did the county learn from that incident? And what were they able to improve immediately? And what still needs to be improved? For when you get ready for the next incident that, like you said, we know is coming.
Okay. First of all, there's probably a lot to say on that, but I'll try to take it in pieces. Lessons learned. Um, First of all, is the importance of adapting to change. We have to just say it out loud that things are changing. And I think I shared with you earlier because I asked my dad, "Have you seen?" And my dad was old; he was in hospice, and I said, "Have you seen extreme fire behavior like this?" And he's like, "Oh hell yeah, son." But not in May. You pay attention; things are changing out there. And I was so glad he said that because that was 5 years before the Thomas fire when we had to fire in Santa Barbara, and they're all down Canyon, Santa Barbara that ripped through Santa Barbara and take out homes and businesses and all the way to the freeway, all the way to the Pacific Ocean. But what we're seeing now, I would say, even though we're having extreme fire behavior, we're having extreme destruction and loss of homes and communities, which we haven't seen to this scale. And so, if if we can't pay attention to the fact that the landscape's changing in the Western Hemisphere, the that drought that took place for 15 to 20 years and what it may have done. The policies from the forest, right? And we want no political thing at all, but just when you do a full suppression policy and every single fire you put out and you don't allow the understory to naturally burn and naturally do what it does, then you have continuous fuel growth right into, a crown fire into 200-foot trees. So if we can adapt to the changing weather, the changing environment, the fact that we need to adapt to change our culture, let's just say that 100-foot fire hazard reduction zone was a very good policy, and the metrics for loss and structure loss in Ventura County were one of the highest of the 58 counties in the state of California. Were one of the best metrics. We had the lowest number of structure loss, and with large scale fires. And so, if we could look and say, well, what do we need to change now? Well, the Fire Safe Council and others offer home hardening inspections that are going to include personal responsibility. So one is change, two is responsibility, and which I'm going to get into is I think for us, is every Californian, especially in the wildland urban interface, needs to recognize there is a personal responsibility and then there's a shared responsibility. So personal responsibility is to take care of your home and property. The shared responsibility is that means if I take care of my home, there's a better chance that my neighbor's house won't catch on fire because my house won't catch on fire. And then if neighbors start changing our culture to have not just home hardening inspections, but act on those things like move the wood pile, away from the house, trim your cheap trees so that they're, a distance from your home. Make sure you have, screens and there's let's say all your vent screens, whether it's attic or garage, they just have a 1/16 inch, so it's almost like a spark arrestor, right? We have them
very fine
fireplaces. So why the heck wouldn't we have it on incoming into an attic or into your garages? That just seems so simple. The building codes, because you said what has been done. Well, building codes have adapted to these changes, but homes that are built in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, maybe not 90s, but prior to that, those homes, even prior, to that, don't have these retrofits in place. And it's going to be our personal responsibility to address some of these things, and then even with responsibility, your civic leaders and leadership, your elected officials, there's a responsibility. And then let's say you said, what has happened here in Ventura County? Something really unique happened. Chief Garner, who's now the current fire chief of Ventura County, worked with the water purveyors in the county of Ventura to agree that every time there's a red flag fire alert, that they would fill their tanks up. So every tank is full now. Every time we have red flag fire, right? Edison has done a power safety power shutoff so that they're not, complicit with fires. So, your infrastructure is starting to make their adjustments, and now it's probably time for neighborhoods and communities to make the adjustments with home hardening and your fuel hazard reduction around your house. So change, responsibility, and I would say, information, get informed. And I would say even this, I don't think people necessarily study, and I don't want to say that, I don't know how to say it, but really pay attention to what is it do I need to do, a landowner or a homeowner in Ventura, in Oxnard, in wherever, right? Because even in Ventura County, there's 10 cities. 2 of our cities are not in the wildland urban interface. But even if they had some wildland urban interface corrections and changes, if there was a structure fire next to them, then they would probably reduce the impact of their house starting another house on fire. So these ideas still work for all communities, but the ones in the wildland urban interface should really take action. And the folks should really, listen to podcasts like this and say, okay, what do I really need to do? Well, get a home hardening inspection. Then what?
Yeah.
Okay, then make sure you have your fuel hazard reduction, and then have a ready, set, go plan, a real one. Okay, so Because like right now, oh my gosh, I wish I knew what I know now about insurance, right? Because first of all, people are struggling with insurance, but I can ask three questions. Do you have insurance? Most people, yes. Okay. Who's your carrier? It's so and so, right? What are your limits? Boom. They don't know, right? What
Yeah,
is it?
right.
And if as soon as I ask that question, that people do not know. And that's part of your ready when you're ready, set, go, right? What are my limits? Have I taken an inventory, a video inventory of everything in my home? Because I'll tell you what, you have a thing that's called personal property loss, and there's a limit to it. Could be 200,000, 300,000, 800,000. Who knows? There's a limit to it. You won't get that money unless you can validate and prove that, hey, I lost this telephone, or I lost this lamp, or these forks and flatware, or this or that. It is absolutely grueling to try to inventory what you have in your home right now. But if you just take a video and it's something bad happened to your home, you had a structure loss or through fire, you have it all accounted for. And so you can access that personal property loss limit, which could be $200,000-300,000 in your pocket. And same with the rest of the things. You have to take a look at your current plan and go like, okay, that's part of the ready. Are we ready? Do we have adequate insurance to rebuild this house in today's market? Because the crazy thing, it could be, it used to be $200 a square foot, $300 a square foot. Now they're saying it's $600-700 a square foot to build a home back in the hillside homes. I mean, start putting that in your noggin, like how much money you'll really need to rebuild your property and your home. And so,
that doesn't motivate you, nothing will.
yeah. And so part of the ready and the ready, set, go is like, what would you take? Man, we lost everything, Chris. And it was because I underestimated with all that experience, right? All those classes and qualifications and certifications and, rank and everything. I underestimated the Thomas Fire. And I would hope that nobody else underestimates, we're ready now. We have a lot of things that are in place very different than before. Obviously, our home's a 2020 home. And so there's box thieves, spark arrestor vents, double pane windows, the fire plan, it's sprinkler, the outside, even with landscaping is met with city and fire approval. It's very different home. There's no wood siding on the house. It's called hardy board. So it looks like not wood. It's just a very different home, but also interior, the things that we would keep, because, we lost every baby book. We lost every single my uniforms, my dad's uniforms.
Oh my
They're in plastic, gone. Every single award or certificate. There's a moment where in this loss, you feel homeless and you feel unemployed, and you're like going, oh my God, if I died right now, there's nothing on earth to show that I even existed. It was just a horrible feeling. And why I'm doing what I'm doing now with the Fire Safe Council, obviously, it's like, I don't want anybody to feel that. I want a fire to come by, because when it comes, is going to happen.
Of course. So, well, Andy Ortega, thank you very, very much for sharing all these personal insights, and that's really some specific knowledge and lessons, advice from someone who
Not in the fire, but look at Eaton Fire, the Fire. We're starting to lose people.
We don't want to. Of course, that's the main thing is that we never want to have a loss of life, but you've given us some really, really practical advice, as well as your general knowledge, and so I just wanted to remind our listeners then that this recording was made to document many of these important lessons learned from someone who has the memory and who experienced them. So Andy Ortega, thanks again very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule today. This has been really enlightening and for all of us to hear. And I wish you in this holiday season a safe holiday season this year. I'm sure you will have, and safety and success for all the firefighters down there in future incidents, to which they will be called. Right? They will eventually be called, and we have to send them off with the most positive possibilities for success as we can. So Andy, thank you so much. Happy holidays. Um, and to the listeners, that wraps up another episode of When Wildfire Comes. To tell your friends about us. Check back regularly for new editions and stay fire safe. Thanks again, Andy.
Chris, thanks so much. Thanks for having me on the podcast. And I want you to know that things like this are very, very important. And to you listeners, the fact that Chris is putting stuff like this together is making a difference. This is what makes a difference. Put those things in your pocket, keep them close to your heart, and then actually take action so that, you don't lose your home when wildfire comes. So, Chris, thanks so much for having me on. It was a pleasure to chat with you.
It really was. Thanks, Andy.
Yeah,
Maybe we'll talk again someday soon.
absolutely.
All right. Bye.